The dinner table had gone so quiet you could hear the ice melting in the water glasses. 47 people. That's how many witnesses watched my daughter-in-law, Vanessa, slide a manila envelope across the white linen tablecloth toward me, slowly, deliberately, the way a cat drops a dead bird at your feet, and say, loud enough for every single person in that banquet hall to hear, "Daniel, I think it's time everyone knew the truth about you." I am 63 years old. I have buried a wife, raised a son alone, built a business from nothing but a second-hand truck and a willingness to work 16-hour days. I have weathered storms that would have folded younger men in half, and in all those years, in every difficult moment life had thrown at me, I had never, not once, felt the specific, suffocating humiliation of having the floor yanked out from under me in front of everyone I loved. Until that Saturday night. Until Vanessa. Let me tell you about my son Marcus. He is 31 years old, 6'2", looks exactly like his mother did at that age, her dark eyes, her easy smile, that way of tilting his head slightly when he's listening to you that makes you feel like the most important person in the world. He has her gentleness too, maybe too much of it as it turned out, because gentle people sometimes let the wrong things slide for far too long, and the wrong things have a way of growing in that silence. Marcus met Vanessa 4 years ago at a colleague's wedding. She was beautiful, I'll give her that. Sharp cheekbones, the kind of confidence that fills a room before she even opens her mouth, and a laugh like she'd practiced it in a mirror. Marcus called me that same night, voice lit up like a teenager's. "Dad, I think I just met someone incredible." I remember smiling at that. I remember being happy for him. I remember thinking, finally, my boy deserves this. I want to be fair. In the beginning, Vanessa was perfectly pleasant to me. Polite in that careful, surface-level way that people are polite to furniture they're not sure yet whether they want to keep. She'd ask how my business was going. She'd hug me at arrivals and departures. She'd send me a birthday card with a generic message written in her neat, looping handwriting. But there was always something underneath it. A current, the way she would redirect Marcus away from conversations he and I were having. The way she'd sigh, not loudly, just barely audibly, whenever I told a long story at dinner. The way she once referred to my 3-bedroom house, the house I'd spent 20 years paying off, the house where Marcus grew up, as quaint. She said it with a smile. She said it like a compliment, but we both knew what she meant. Marcus married her 18 months ago. I stood beside him at the altar, straightened his collar before he walked out, told him I was proud of him, that his mother would have been too, and I meant every word. I danced at their reception. I gave a toast that made half the room cry and the other half laugh. I handed over a check that represented a significant portion of my savings because I wanted them to have the honeymoon they'd dreamed about. That was the version of Daniel that Vanessa tolerated, the useful one, the generous one, the one who showed up, wrote checks, fixed things, and then drove home quietly. The trouble started when I stopped being useful and started being present. It was small things at first. Marcus and I had a tradition, Sunday breakfasts, just the two of us, a diner near his apartment that we'd been going to since he was 14. Vanessa started joining us, which was fine, which I welcomed genuinely, but then the breakfasts moved from the diner to their apartment. Then they became brunch, which started later and ended earlier. Then they started getting cancelled. "We have plans, Dad." Every Sunday they had plans. I mentioned it to Marcus once, gently. He got that uncomfortable look, the one where he stares at a point slightly to the left of your face and nods too quickly, and he said, "I know, Dad, I know, she just feels like we need more couple time on weekends." I let it go. Then it was the holidays. Vanessa's family, large, loud, and apparently in constant need of the undivided attention of my son, began to absorb every celebration. Christmas at her parents', Thanksgiving at her sister's, her family's vacation in July that Marcus suddenly couldn't miss. I spent Christmas that year alone for the first time in my adult life, heating up a frozen meal and watching a movie I don't even remember the name of. I called Marcus on Christmas morning. He answered, sounded distracted, wished me a quick happy holiday, and was gone in 4 minutes. I let that go too. But the thing about letting things go is that eventually you've let so much go that there's almost nothing left to hold on to. The party was Vanessa's idea. She framed it as a celebration. Marcus had just made senior partner at his firm, a genuine achievement, the kind of milestone that deserved to be marked. She booked a private room at Hartwell's, one of those restaurants where the appetizers cost more than my weekly grocery bill, and invited 47 people, colleagues of Marcus's, Vanessa's extensive family, a handful of their mutual friends, and me. I wore the grey suit I'd bought for Marcus's wedding. I arrived on time. I brought a card with a handwritten letter inside that had taken me 3 evenings to write properly. I sat at the table assigned to me, near the back, I noticed, at a table with people I didn't recognize, and I told myself it didn't matter. Tonight was about Marcus. Tonight I was just here to celebrate my son. The evening started pleasantly enough. There were speeches from colleagues. There was wine and laughter and the comfortable din of a successful party. Marcus caught my eye from across the room at one point and gave me a smile that I held onto like a life raft. And then came the moment, that moment, the one I am going to describe to you as precisely as I can because I want you to understand that what happened next was not an accident, it was not a slip, it was not a misunderstanding. It was planned. Vanessa stood up to give a toast, everyone quieted. She was poised and polished and perfectly in control, as always. She talked about Marcus, about how far he'd come, about how proud she was of the man he'd become. People were smiling, nodding, raising their glasses. And then she pivoted. Marcus has worked incredibly hard to build the life we have, she said, her voice shifting almost imperceptibly, like a key change in a song you didn't realize was turning sinister. He's overcome a lot, including, I think we should all acknowledge, certain expectations placed on him that weren't always in his best interest. The room went slightly uncertain. People exchanged glances. And that's when she reached beneath the table, produced the manila envelope, and pushed it toward me. Daniel, she said, and the sound of my own name in her mouth at that moment was somehow the most unpleasant thing I'd ever heard. I think it's time everyone knew the truth about you. Inside the envelope were printed emails. Old emails, 7, 8 years old, from a business dispute I'd had with a former partner. There had been a lawsuit, it had been settled. The details were complicated, as business disputes always are, and I was not entirely blameless in how it had unfolded, but it had been resolved, it was over, it was the past. Vanessa did not see it that way. She summarized the dispute for the room, her version of it, stripped of every nuance and complication, reduced to its most damaging interpretation. She suggested I had acted fraudulently. She used the word lied. She said that Marcus had been too loyal to say it himself, but that she felt as his wife that it was her responsibility to protect him from people who had shown, through their actions, that they could not be trusted. She was talking about me. She was talking about me to 47 people in a restaurant, at a table with a white linen cloth and crystal glasses and candles, while my son sat 6 seats away and turned the color of chalk. I sat very still for a moment. I am not a man who reacts quickly in emotional situations. I've always been slow to temperature, like a cast iron pan. I felt the eyes of everyone in the room on me. I felt the specific, nauseating quality of public humiliation, how it hollows you out from the chest first, then moves outward to your hands and feet. And then something happened that I did not entirely plan. I stood up. I want to be clear about what hitting back hard means, because I am not a man who shouts. I am not a man who throws things or makes scenes in the ugly sense of the word. What I am is a man who, when pushed past a certain point, becomes extraordinarily calm, dangerously calm, the kind of calm that comes from having nothing left to lose. I straightened my jacket. I picked up the manila envelope. I looked at Vanessa for a long moment, long enough that the silence in the room became its own kind of statement, and then I turned to face everyone else. I appreciate Vanessa's passion for honesty, I said, so let me honor that. I spoke for 11 minutes. I know it was 11 minutes because someone told me afterward that they'd checked their watch, stunned that a man speaking calmly without notes could hold a room of 47 people in complete silence for that long. I talked about the lawsuit, all of it, clearly and without shame, including the parts where I'd made mistakes, because owning your mistakes fully is the only way to strip them of their power. I talked about how it had been settled and resolved and what I had learned from it. I talked about the fact that Vanessa had known about this dispute for over 2 years. Marcus had told her early in their relationship, and had chosen this specific night, this public stage, to deploy it. Then I talked about Marcus. I talked about the night his mother died, when he was 11 years old, and I sat on the edge of his bed in the dark and promised him that whatever came next, I would be there. I talked about every school play and every bad grade and every heartbreak and every triumph I had shown up for. I talked about the Sunday morning breakfasts, the real ones at the diner, over bad coffee and plates of eggs, where we had learned to talk to each other like equals. I talked about the check I had written for their honeymoon, not to claim credit, but because I wanted everyone in that room to understand the full picture of who I was to my son. And then, and this is the part that mattered most, I looked directly at Marcus. I have made mistakes in my life, I said, but abandoning you has never been one of them, and loving you, even when it wasn't returned the way I needed, has never been something I regretted, not for a single day. Marcus's jaw was tight, his eyes were bright, he looked like a man at war with himself. I set the envelope down on the table. I'm going to leave now, I said to the room quietly, because this is my son's celebration, and I won't be the reason it becomes something else. Congratulations, Marcus, I'm proud of you, I've always been proud of you. I walked out. The drive home was 40 minutes. My hands were steady on the wheel the whole way, I don't know what that says about me. Marcus called at 11:47 that night. I almost didn't answer, and then I thought about the 11-year-old boy on the edge of the bed in the dark, and I picked up. He didn't say much at first, just my name. Dad said it like it was the only word left in a language he'd almost forgotten how to speak. I know, I said. She had no right. I know. I didn't know she was going to. I believe you. He was quiet for a long time. Then, I've been letting things happen that I shouldn't have let happen for a long time. I didn't tell him he was right, because he needed to arrive at that on his own terms and keep it when he got there. I just said, I'm not going anywhere, Marcus. I never have been. We talked for 2 hours that night. Really talked, the way we used to over bad diner coffee, the way we hadn't in almost 2 years. He told me things about his marriage that I won't repeat here because they are his to carry. I told him things about loneliness that I had never said out loud to anyone. Before we hung up, he said, Sunday breakfast, the diner, can we? I'll be there, I said, I'm always there. I don't tell this story because I want sympathy, or because I want to cast Vanessa as a villain in a simple story. People are rarely simple, and her reasons for what she did, whatever they were, are surely more complicated than pure malice. I tell it because of what I learned that night in the 40 minutes of silence driving home with steady hands. Dignity is not the absence of being hurt. It is what you do with the hurt when it arrives. It is the decision, made in a single still moment at a dinner table with 47 people watching, to tell the truth about yourself before someone else gets to define you. Vanessa thought she was taking something from me that night. She thought she was handing me shame like a gift, wrapped in a manila envelope with a bow made of old emails. What she actually gave me was my son back. I'll take that trade every single time. Sunday mornings, bad coffee, a booth by the window. Some things are worth fighting for. Some things are worth everything.